On this morning, we have a very special guest with us, our wonderful mayor who's doing a fantastic job here in the fair city of Louisville, Kentucky, has come to be with us this morning, and he wants to say a word with us. Would you help me welcome the Honorable Greg Fischer to the pulpit of the Burnett Avenue Baptist Church?
Good morning, church. And I'd say good morning, choir, as well. Y'all are sounding good. Way to go. Way to go. Thank you for the music, bro. I appreciate that. I want to thank you all for letting me come by and say a few words today. Thanking Reverend Shule as well, and really great leadership you're showing on behalf of the city here and developing our church here. And I want to thank everybody, too, for a wonderful week we had 3 weeks ago with the passing of our hero, Muhammad Ali, where we showed the world, I guess we shook up the world, as he would say, with a week of love and a week of hope. And usually when the world is transfixed on the TV, it's through some type of tragedy or some type of moment of despair. That was a week unlike we've seen in quite some time before. And to me, that's the week that should be every week in our city and in our country. But as has been said, our nation has a heavy heart right now through the culmination, I would say, of several events. We have cell phones now capturing injustice in our communities of color that has been going on a lot longer than this past week. But as it plays out in almost real time on TV and on media, if we look at the bright side, it is awakening the consciousness of many in our country whose minds have not seen injustice before. And it is so painful that death has to occur for this awakening to occur. So I hope it's all for a broader purpose. We see on live TV the shooting of 5 police officers in Dallas. And we know that's wrong. And then we see an argument take place in the country as if we have to take sides. This is wrong or that's wrong. No, they're both wrong. We know that as human people. And then we can't forget the drumbeat of daily violence that we see in our cities that we've almost become numb to. The gunshot wounds, the homicides that are increasing in almost every city in our country. If today is a normal day in our country, 29 boys and young men of color will lose their lives today. Tomorrow it'll be on page B5 in the newspaper. People turn the page and say, who won the game yesterday? Have we become that desensitized as a country that we don't understand the sanctity of every life? So while these big headlines grab our attention, I do not want us to lose attention and focus on the daily issues and challenges that have been facing our city for way too long. Now our question is, and why I asked to come by today, is where are we going to go as a country? I believe that our cities are going to set the tone. And what happens in our cities is what's going to dictate what happens in our country. I don't have to worry about you guys. You're here in church. You get it. Are we going to create a narrative of peace, of compassion, of unity while we seek justice? Those are not mutually exclusive either. We can hold to our highest ideals while we point out the deficits in our society and while we push for justice. We've seen that work out in our country before with many of our historical forefathers from Martin Luther King on down. And we're in a different kind of fight right now with different tools that are being used as well. But we need the same type of resolve to get to a better end. And I would say an end that will never be perfect. but one that we've got to continue to work on. Now, part of that is our police and community relations. We have got to continue to ensure that our police receive the very best training they can, because it's these moments of interaction with police in the community that are playing out on TV that we kind of judge our social contract by. And it is only natural for us to put ourselves in that situation and say, what would have happened to me? Now, that is a much easier question for me most of the time, if I'm going to generalize, standing up here as a 58-year-old white man, than it is for a young man of color in our community. And I believe our country is starting to get that, which is a good thing. For our police officers who dread going into the work, the possibility of them being in that situation, imagine what's going through their mind. Yesterday morning, I visited our recruit training facility. We have 90 police recruits right now. Yesterday was Family Day. Imagine that. 2 days, 36 hours after Dallas, your family's coming together to learn about what it's going to be like for you to be a police officer. It would only be natural for some of those recruits to be saying, what have I gotten myself into? Now, there's others that are saying, this is my calling. My city needs me. My country needs me. But what would happen if all 90 of them said, I'm going to take a pass on this? In the next class of 90, in the next class of 90. We have to have a functioning police force in our city in order to have stability. So how do we come together as imperfect people where we support our police officers while we demand our Constitution be upheld, while we demand, in a humble way. When I say demand, it's not in your face. It's just like we want this because it's for the best of us. How do we demand to make sure that our police officers have the very best training in implicit bias, what used to be known as racial profiling? How do we make sure our police officers have the very best when it comes to de-escalation techniques? So much of this problems that we see play out on TV are because of escalation, right? We see this anger, rage, violence, two groups getting closer and closer to each other, and then an explosion of some kind. As opposed to what we know and our logic tells us, calm down, comply, think, breathe, pull apart, give it time, de-escalate. It's hard, though, sometimes to do that. But our police officers have got to lead the way on this. And our citizens also have got to say, I get it too. Yesterday, an interesting conversation came up. It was with Dwight Mitchell, who said, people want our police officers to change. And he, as a police officer, I'm sure many of y'all know Dwight, said, what kind of change do our citizens have to have? It's a contract that we both have got to think of. Now, the media does not help. We're saturated with the media that almost seems like to be playing this up. Us versus them. Could build this to some dramatic TV moment so we can all watch disgusted as we see our nation and our cities fall apart. Social media, with the anonymity that provides and some of the hate that comes out of that, is often not helpful in terms of fueling rage. Where are those voices for peace and compassion and love? All of these values that we're born with. You don't see a little baby get out of the womb and crawl up to somebody and slap them in the face. What do they want? They want a hug. They want a kiss. You see even the baddest people when they're dead, what do they want to have around them at the end? They want to have their family. They want to have love. So that period between birth and death, our job is to make sure love and compassion is there every day of the week, and that's our response. Can I have some music over there, man? I mean, it's kind of quiet up here without any background. I mean, just because I'm the mayor doesn't mean I don't get background music. We've got a presidential contender right now who's seeking to divide. I'm tired of hate. I don't know about you guys. I'm tired of Muslims versus Christians, gay versus straight, black versus white. Doesn't make sense. We know that. The good book tells us that today. What did our first prayer say? We are together as one people. It doesn't focus on secondary differences of skin color, ethnicity, faith. One human race. So our future is obviously up to us, right? We got this big country, and we can say it's up to the country. Not really. It's up to each one of us. All these problems that are so big, whether it be education, hunger, opportunity, at the end of the day, it comes down to one person at a time. And how we all look in our souls, in our hearts, and look in the eyes of our kids and our grandkids and say, what kind of future do we want for them? It's not a future of hate. It's not a future of killing people. It is a future of justice. It is a future where everybody is counted for in this city and in this country. I get that. How we lean into it together is what will define our future as well. In our city, and we saw that during the Ali Week, we saw a city come together in a way that no other city we've seen come together before in this country. And I'd like to believe it's because of the work that's happening in our churches, the work that's happening with our compassion efforts, our civil rights efforts, our race relations effort. Are they perfect? No, they're not perfect. But do we run away from the conversations? No, we don't. Are the conversations uncomfortable from time to time for some people? Sure they are, because we got a lot of variety and 300 million people in our country. So it's only natural that we might get uncomfortable. But when we do that, we know that we're growing. And when we're growing, we got more possibility to do good. And why are we here on the face of the earth? To make it a better place. That's why the Lord put us here. It wasn't to fight each other. It was to make sure that we lift each other up in justice. So our job, and why I came by, I want to ask you all, as leaders, to be the greatest of all time. As champions for peace, compassion, and justice, while we continue this imperfect journey we're on as a country. I get that, you get that, but we have no choice but to do it as one people in one city. So I thank you all so much for what you're doing day after day, and I'm humbled to be a fellow traveler with you on this journey. I say let's show this country how to do it. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you.